Jonathan Kuminga got tossed, Will Richard is fitting in nicely, Brandin Podziemski is a plus-minus darling, and Steph Curry might average 39 points a game this year because of a critical rule change. All that and more after this. Hello, my name is Dean Simon, and I talk about the Golden State Warriors over here on this channel. If you are a Warriors fan, please consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on those post notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. We'll be talking about the team throughout the entirety of the 25-26 season and way further beyond, so if that's something you're interested in, please consider liking, leaving me a comment below, telling me what you think, pressing subscribe, and turning on post notifications. All right, back to our regularly scheduled programming. On the first topic, Jonathan Kuminga got thrown out of the game against the Trailblazers after a pretty bad missed call where he was gathering into his layup on the break and he got hit on the arm by a Blazer. I think it was Blake Wesley or someone like that. And then he kind of took the second step for the gather on the shot and then sort of flailed out of it because he didn't have control of the ball. And then he went crazy towards the refs. I think he went up to the ref a little bit, nudged the ref, put a hand on him, and of course that's just a big no-no in the NBA, and he immediately was given one technical and then thrown out of the game. But what I really liked about his first half against the Trailblazers was, even though his shot necessarily wasn't going down or he wasn't getting that many shot attempts, his rebounding and his ability to push the pace was something that both Warriors fans and the coaching staff and Steve Kerr alike will really enjoy out of Jonathan Kuminga. And Steve Kerr actually said something to that effect in the post-game interview, saying that he not only liked Jonathan Kuminga's rebounding and, ability to get out in transition, but he just likes the fact that he was ready to argue with the ref and get himself thrown out of a game. He kind of just likes that fire, and that he's willing to go that far, to that length, to complain about calls in a preseason meaningless game and get thrown out. Of course, Steve Kerr is going to ride for his guys when they get into trouble with the refs, when they're sent back to the locker room. So that was to be expected. But Jonathan Kuminga, some pretty big positives there. Moving forward, Will Richard is fitting in nicely. If he can just become a little bit more consistent of a catch and shoot guy on the 3-point line, and specifically in the corners, I feel like he's going to play a pretty big part on this team. He's maybe not going to get more than 10, 12 minutes a night, if that, but when he's out there on the floor, he can be extremely, extremely serviceable as a pretty nice two-way guard. And getting that out of he was the 56th pick, I think, in the draft this year, getting that out of your late second round pick, basically the last pick in the draft, that would be major for a aging Warriors team that's going to be looking for some, a different pair of young legs to kind of help them get through the slog that is the regular season and the full 82 game schedule. So all of these things are looking very positive for Will Richard. Against the Trailblazers, he was able to knock down a couple of threes, and he plays amazing defense. He's very stellar on the defensive end. He has great agility and strength for his size. He's fantastic on that end of the floor. But what I really want to see from him is just him having a sense of being a little bit more poised, a little bit more controlled, because when there's certain plays where Will Richard is camped in the corner and Brandin Podziemski or Steph or Trace Jackson Davis, whoever, is trying to find an outside shooter once they penetrate the paint, it's not looking like Will Richard's footwork is kind of set up to be that catch and shoot type guy, or at least it's not like he's necessarily used to that role, it seems. At least just watching him in the left corner against the Trailblazers in the second half of this game, there was one play where I think it was Steph or somebody threw him a pass to the corner. He was more or less wide open, but he kind of moved his feet in a way where, it ended up being a travel, but it just didn't look natural. So I feel like him getting that kind of footwork down, being able to just let shots go right off the catch in the corners, that's going to be huge for his development, especially while Steph and Draymond and Jimmy Butler are still on this team before they ride into the sunset. That's going to be the next part of his development, in my opinion. Is just, we know that he is a very capable defender and capable scorer when he wants to be, and a decent 3-point shooter, but just being able to catch and shoot on this team when he's a rookie and he's surrounded by all this older and more reliable talent. If he wants to carve out a spot for himself in the rotation, maybe he wants to take some of Guy Santos's minutes, or someone that's more on the end of the bench like that, he's going to have to hit his catch and shoot threes. Simple as that. Moving forward, Brandin Podziemski, what did I say? He was a plus minus darling, and that is exactly true. If you look at this game against the Portland Trailblazers, the Warriors came out with a 118-111 victory, and Brandin Podziemski was a plus 11 for the game, despite going 1 for 9 from the field. He was basically a complete non-factor from a scoring perspective, but thanks to his defensive intensity, his hustle, his poise when he's handling the ball in the half court, and just being a dependable guy that this Warriors team can swing the ball to, and he can make a solid decision in, a pretty quick amount of time. He basically plays point .5 basketball. Just being a reliable guy for this team at such a young age, that's what leads Brandin Podziemski to be a part of the units that go on huge runs, that really try and close games or try and make a huge comeback. We saw it against the Lakers the other night when he had his magnum opus of the preseason, the 23 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds without Steph, without Jimmy in the lineup, where he was the complete package on the offensive end as their main offensive initiator. We saw Brandin Podziemski do all of these things and be a reliable offensive option in that sense. But now with Steph on the floor, he can kind of, and this is what I love about Brandin Podziemski, he can mold himself more into just being the gritty defensive guy that's the first guy on the floor, and he's skying for offensive and defensive rebounds, and he's battling with the centers down low, whether it's Donovan Klingen or Jan Hansen. He's just trying to get his nose in there and come down with the basketball and get it moving in transition. And he's always been a pest on the defensive end, amazing at drawing charges, but he's now slowly becoming way more of a reliable scoring option. Sure, his jumper is still very streaky, but when it's going down, he is a pretty formidable guy to go against when, again, when the Warriors are pushing the pace and getting out on the break. He can just pull up for a three on the left wing pretty easily, and it goes down a consistent amount of the time. When he's left completely unguarded and he can step into it and set his feet, Brandin Podziemski is a pretty fantastic shooter. And if you watched him last year, the beginning half, or I guess the first 2/3 of the season last year, he couldn't throw a rock in the ocean. But the final third, maybe the final 28 games of the year post All-Star break, Brandin Podziemski was hitting threes at a 43% rate on like 6 attempts a game, averaging over 16 points, 6 boards, 3 assists. The true shooting percentage numbers were out of the water, and that was him as the scorer. But we are going to be knowing Brandin Podziemski with a healthy Steph in the lineup, knock on wood. We're going to know Brandin Podziemski as more of the defensive, gritty guy, the glue guy that's a great connective piece on the roster. And that's what I think is so amazing about Pods. That's what gets him included in the lineups that eventually go on to do great things throughout the course of any given game. And that's just why he's able to make so much of an impact on the floor every single night. And he's always putting himself in great positions to help this Warriors team either close out games or make a huge comeback like they tried to do in the Lakers game and like they successfully did in this Trailblazers game. All right, final thing I'm going to talk about is something that's kind of been covered by different Warriors reporters and different fan accounts and things like that, that with the new rule change from the NBA, there's going to be a lot more free throws coming Steph's way because they completely eliminated the high five, or just being able to completely knock a guy's arm out of the frame and take their legs out from underneath them after the shot is released, because guys have been getting away with that for years, and Steph is a guy that's been missing out on foul calls and free throws for those exact reasons. And I think it's crazy that it took until the Houston Rockets, and mainly Dillon Brooks, targeting Steph's injured hand in that first round playoff series that went to 7 games, where Dillon Brooks, he would see Steph let a shot go, and because he knows that if he just makes hand-to-hand contact, makes a high-five contact with Steph after he lets the shot go, that it won't be a foul, Dillon Brooks was trying to bat down and further injure Steph's injured hand in that playoff series. And it took until then. It took until Dillon Brooks trying to actively injure Steph Curry after he releases threes for the the refs and the league to take a look at those kinds of plays and think, you know what? Maybe players shouldn't be able to make any contact that they want with the shooter after they release the ball. Maybe we shouldn't allow that to happen. And now Steph is going to be a major beneficiary of this. We've seen it with the Warriors' first couple of preseason games where he got fouled on a three when, otherwise you wouldn't have ever seen that call prior to this preseason. And again, against the Portland Trailblazers tonight, there was another three on the right wing, I want to say, where Steph got his arms kind of hit to the sides by, I think it was Young Hansen coming back in transition, and Steph went to the line for three free throws. And Steph is just going to get to the line so much more often. And this is for a guy who historically has not done well in the free throw shooting volume department, not the percentage, trust me. But the volume of free throws attempted, for as great of a scorer as Steph is, he has just never shot that many free throws. And now that you're giving the greatest shooter of all time, the greatest free throw shooter of all time, even more chances to get free points at the line because guys are going to be trying to slap his arm into the next county, he is going to maybe get a bump. It's plausible to say that he might get a bump of like a cool 3 or 4 points a game to a scoring average this year. That's not ridiculous to say because in this preseason game alone, Steph had, I think, 7 free throw attempts in the first quarter. And it would be rare for Steph to attempt 7 free throws throughout the course of any game especially over his career, but over the past year or two, Steph would rarely ever get to that point where he's attempting 8 or 10 free throws in a game. Mostly, you can attribute that to his play style, but also the fact that he's getting clobbered on these threes and the refs just choose to look the other way. But no more. The refs have decided that completely clipping his hand and arm, it's not going to fly anymore, and he's going to get to the line. So, is it impossible for Steph to, going into his age 38 season, to average 28 to 30 points a game? I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm just going to throw it out there that he might reach that kind of plateau, but who knows? At the end of the day, his 17th year is what he's going into, and he's clearly aging. And I don't want to say he's lost a step because I think he's more explosive than ever, really. But going into this season, those added free throws are going to be making a huge amount of difference for a guy that, again, is the greatest free throw shooter of all time and the guy that's jacked up the most threes in NBA history and made the most threes. He's going to be getting to the line pretty healthy amount of extra times throughout the course of the season and the next couple of years because this, it's not like it's going away after this year. So very, very positive news for the Warriors, for Steph, and for anybody that likes to see that guy shoot free throws. I don't know. All right, but that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for tuning into another video. Please hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. And let me know what you think about today's video. Leave a comment. What do you think about Steph potentially getting to the line maybe 3 to 5 extra times each game? Do you like Brandin Podziemski's production on both ends of the floor? Do you think Will Richard could compete or help the Warriors compete as a pretty good rotational piece going forward, or at least for this season? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.